When the weather forecast announces more than 30 degrees, please throw your familiar gardening rules out the window. The exact things that saved your beloved plants in the mild days of May will inevitably kill them in today's extreme heat. I know exactly how that feels. You come home after a long, oppressively hot workday. You are exhausted. The evening sun is still beating down mercilessly, and you look on with concern as your garden suffers. You might only have 20 minutes of energy left before you simply want and need to rest. That is why we are doing things differently today. We will start immediately with the most important thing, a clear emergency plan for your garden. If you only have 20 minutes, please forget about indiscriminately watering everything and everyone. Save only what would certainly die without your help. Here is your strict energy-saving priority list. Priority 1. All your potted plants and balcony boxes. A pot in the blazing sun has a maximum survival time of 48 hours. These plants are now completely dependent on you. Priority 2. Everything you newly planted this year. No matter how drought-resistant the plant is supposed to be according to the label, young roots do not yet reach the saving depths of the soil. Priority 3. Your vegetables that are currently blooming or forming valuable fruit, such as tomatoes, zucchini, and cucumbers. Drought stress right now means inedible, bitter fruits or damaging blossom end rot. And everything else? The lawn, the established large perennials, the old shrubs, that must and will wait. That is not neglect. That is smart, energy-saving watering with clear priorities. Let us now calmly and thoroughly discuss why this plan looks exactly the way it does, and how you can implement these points practically and without much effort. We begin with the biggest and most devastating misunderstanding in the summer garden. I call it the illusion of thirst. Imagine the typical scene. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The heat is shimmering over the patio. You look at your beloved hydrangeas, the large pumpkin in the garden bed, or the zucchini, and what you see breaks every caring gardener's heart. The large green leaves are hanging completely limp and lifeless. The plant looks as if it is painfully dying of thirst right before your eyes at this very moment. Our very first, deeply human instinct screams at us to immediately grab the watering can and rescue the plant with water. But I implore you, pause right now. Put the hose or the watering can back down. What you are observing in the sweltering midday heat is, in most cases, absolutely not thirst. It is a highly intelligent, life-saving protection program enacted by the plant itself. When the sun's radiation reaches its absolute peak, an enormous amount of precious water evaporates from those large, broad-leaf surfaces. To stop this life-threatening water loss immediately, the plant uses a fascinating trick. It intentionally lowers the water pressure inside its cells. The result is that the leaves simply fold downwards. By drooping like this, the plant consciously reduces the surface area exposed to the direct, destructive rays of the sun. It is protecting itself from dangerous dehydration. If you panic during this exact phase and start watering, things happen that will massively damage the plant. First, you are very often pouring water into soil that is actually still sufficiently moist beneath the dry, hot surface. You run the risk of the fine roots literally drowning or beginning to rot because harmful waterlogging is happening unnoticed deep below. Second, and this is a mistake that often happens out of misunderstood, deep care, many people tend to completely hose down their plants from above in the midday heat. We picture a refreshing, cool summer rain. For us humans, a cold shower at 35 degrees is an absolute blessing. For your plants in the garden, however, it is pure stress and a great danger. The water on the hot, sunlit leaves evaporates again within a few minutes. It brings absolutely no real, lasting cooling to the inside of the plant. What it certainly does instead is create the perfect, warm, and moist microclimate for dangerous fungal diseases. Powdery mildew and other harmful fungal spores love nothing more than warm, moisture-coated leaves in the late afternoon. If you really and effectively want to do something good for your plants at noon, then give them generous shade. Put up an umbrella, but never shower them off. But how do you find out beyond a doubt whether the plant really urgently needs water or whether it is just putting on this midday protective theater for you? The honest and only reliable test always takes place in the evening. Wait patiently until 8 o'clock, when the sun is much lower and the most extreme heat of the day has noticeably broken. Then go look specifically at exactly those plants that looked so sad and lifeless in the early afternoon. In almost all cases, you will now experience a small miracle. You will see that the leaves have straightened up again all by themselves. They look plump, green, and healthy once more. The plant has ended its protection program because the danger from the direct sun has passed. It didn't need a single drop of water from you today. Only if the leaves are still hanging limply late in the evening or the next cool morning is the plant truly thirsty. A quick glance at noon almost always deceives you. And if you want to be absolutely sure, do the finger test. Stick your finger deep into the soil, not just scratching the surface. If it feels pleasantly cool and slightly moist down there, everything is in perfect order. That brings us to one of the most important adjustments in our emergency plan, and that is the exact time window in which we water. When we give our plants water, crucially determines our success or failure in these extreme temperatures. In normal, pleasant summer weather, when the thermometer shows a comfortable 25 degrees, it is completely fine to water sometime during a leisurely morning. If you head out with the watering can after a relaxed breakfast, all is well in the garden. In a real, oppressive heat wave, this rhythm is unfortunately completely ineffective and only wastes your valuable time and energy. If you water at 9 or 10 in the morning at 35 degrees, the soil has already been heavily heated by the strong morning sun. A gigantic portion of the water you so painstakingly carry over in cans evaporates immediately upon hitting the hot, hard surface. It rises back into the air as invisible water vapor long before it even has a chance to seep down to the thirsty roots deep below. In this moment, you are not watering your plants at all. You are merely watering the atmosphere. The new, all-decisive time window for extreme heat waves is very early in the morning, exactly between 5 and 7 o'clock. I know that sounds like a tremendous effort, especially when you want to use your garden for relaxation. But let's look closely at why this is physically so important. These early morning hours are the only time of day when the soil reaches its absolute coolest phase. Think about it. Even if you water late in the evening, say at 10 o'clock, the soil has stored the immense heat of 14 hours of blazing sunshine. It is as warm as a large oven. Water hitting this hot evening soil also evaporates to an extremely large extent, completely unused. Only in the early morning hours, after the night has continuously cooled the soil for hours, is the earth absorbent again, like a cool, soft sponge. The water can penetrate deeply, calmly, and without large evaporation losses down to the deeper lying roots. If you have an automatic timer with a drip hose, you can simply set this technology to run between 4 and 6 in the morning. That is truly priceless in such strenuous weeks. If you absolutely can only water in the evening because your daily work routine allows no alternative, please pour the water directly and very specifically only at the base of the respective plant. Leave the bare patches of soil in between completely dry. Just as important as the right time is the right amount and rhythm. The amount must drastically go up and the rhythm must noticeably go down. It is a widespread mistake to lovingly walk through the garden every evening and give every plant a small, friendly splash of water. At 35 degrees, this superficial watering is absolutely useless. It only moistens the very top centimeter of soil. By the next afternoon, it is all completely evaporated. Even worse, you are training your plants to form their sensitive roots shallowly at the surface, where they will immediately burn during the next heat wave. Besides, you are only waking up the weed seeds on the surface that way. The new life-saving rule is 15 to 20 liters of water per square meter, but only every 3 to 4 days. When you water this extremely thoroughly and extensively, the water draws deep into the ground. It literally lures the plant's roots down behind it into the saving, cool depths where they are protected. To securely check whether you have really watered enough, do the spade test. Wait a good, quiet hour after watering. Then take a spade and dig out a small piece of earth in an inconspicuous spot in the bed. Look closely at the soil profile. Is the soil really dark and well moistened 20 centimeters deep? If so, you did everything right. If, however, it is only wet on the top 3 centimeters and hard and bone dry underneath, then your watering was, as harsh as it sounds, purely cosmetic. Let's now come to our absolute priority number 1 from the initial emergency plan. Your beloved potted plants on the balcony, the patio, or in the courtyard. The challenges here are truly extreme. A flower pot mostly stands completely unprotected from all sides in the blazing sun. The soil in the pot has no protective contact with the cool, deep earth below. Everything heats up at a rapid pace. For these potted plants, there is an old golden rule that you certainly know. You should never leave water standing in the saucer, as the roots will otherwise start to rot and the plant literally suffocates. This rule is perfectly correct and very important at normal, mild temperatures. But once temperatures reach 30 or 35 degrees, this old rule completely reverses. In an extreme heat wave, the saucer becomes your very best friend and the absolute lifesaver of the plant. The strategy now looks like this. You water your pots and planters extremely thoroughly in the early morning. You water carefully, but keep going until all the soil is completely soaked and the water runs out of the drainage holes at the bottom. And then, and this is the crucial part, you consciously fill the saucer to the brim with water. This small puddle of water serves the plant as a strict, life-saving daily reserve. The heat on a midsummer day like this is so enormous, and the evaporation rate through the leaves is so extremely high, that the plant will suck this water up from the saucer piece by piece, like through an invisible straw, over the hot hours of the day. I guarantee you, when you check on your plants in the evening, the saucer will have been drunk completely empty. There is absolutely no risk of root rot from standing water at these temperatures, simply because the water does not sit there long enough to cause rot. In addition, you can protect potted plants with brilliantly simple physical tricks. Move all your pots closely together. Set them up so that they shade one another. For small, particularly sensitive pots, use the so-called thermos effect. Take the small pot in which your plant is growing and place it completely inside a significantly larger, empty cache-pot. The empty space, the invisible layer of air that now sits between the inner and the outer pot, acts as highly effective natural insulation. Just like a thermos flask for your coffee, the extreme heat from the outside is no longer passed directly to the sensitive roots in the inner pot. What the thermos effect does for the pots on your patio, a good layer of mulch does for your garden beds. Bare, uncovered soil is like an open wound in a heat wave. The sun burns mercilessly down on it, extracts all the moisture, and bakes the surface into a hard, impermeable crust. When you then try to water, the water just rolls off and flows away uselessly to the side. Mulch is the natural, cooling air conditioning for your soil. A simple layer of 5 centimeters of ordinary grass clippings from your last lawn mowing is completely sufficient. When you spread this mulch over the earth, it shields the soil from the direct sun. It lowers the soil temperature on hot days by an incredible 10 degrees Celsius. That saves the fine soil life and protects the sensitive feeder roots. In addition, the mulch layer cuts evaporation in half. Anyone who waters bare soil at 35 degrees is basically watering halfway for the sun. But anyone who mulches is watering 100% for the plant. This is not a visual gimmick. This is simply life-saving physics for your garden. Another physical shock that we absolutely must avoid concerns the water temperature. Cold tap water from the hose often comes out at a brisk 10 to 12 degrees. Imagine the soil in your garden has heated up to nearly 40 degrees over the course of the day. If this ice-cold water now hits the hot, fine feeder roots directly, the plant suffers a massive, traumatic cold shock. The roots can die, water uptake stops immediately, and the plant paradoxically dries out despite the wet soil. The solution to this is completely free and requires only a small habit change. Simply fill your watering cans in the evening. Leave them outside overnight. In the morning, during our perfect time window between 5 and 7 o'clock, the water will have naturally taken on the mild, gentle temperature of the garden. It means zero stress for your plants and is absorbed wonderfully. During a heat wave like this, besides improper watering, there are 2 other things that we often want to do with the best of intentions, but which are absolute taboos. The first iron taboo is fertilizing. If our plants look somewhat weak in the heat, we instinctively want to strengthen them and give them nutrients. Do not do this under any circumstances in extreme heat. Commercial fertilizer, whether mineral or liquid, chemically consists of salts. What happens when you put salt on something? It massively extracts water from its surroundings. If you introduce salts in the form of fertilizer into an already dry soil, the natural process reverses. The salt in the fertilizer draws the last bit of residual water right out of the already thirsty roots. You would literally burn and destroy the plant from the inside out. Fertilizing should, without exception, only be done again when the heat wave is finally broken and the soil has been well moistened by rain. The second big taboo is planting or repotting. Even the slightest disturbance to the roots is a certain death sentence at 35 degrees. When repotting, some of the fine, water-absorbing feeder roots inevitably tear off. The plant then needs weeks to repair that damage and establish itself in the new soil. It simply does not have this time in extreme heat. Wait patiently for the much milder and moister planting season in early autumn. What you can wonderfully do instead to help your sensitive new plantings from our emergency plan is this: build them a simple umbrella. An old parasol, a light-colored bedsheet stretched over a few sticks, or a simple reed mat are entirely sufficient. 2 or 3 hours of artificial midday shade spare these young plants extreme stress and save you, the gardener, at least 2 complete watering rounds a week. Large commercial nurseries do exactly the same thing in the summer. Finally, let's talk about what has consciously not been given a place in our emergency plan: the established plants and your lawn. Why aren't they on the list? Because watering them right now often does much more harm than good. Established drought survivors like the majestic sedum, fragrant lavender, Russian sage, or catmint, essentially all plants that have been firmly in their place for 2 or 3 years, do not necessarily need your help right now. Over the past years, these plants have sent their roots deep, often meters deep, into the ground. Deep down, they find cool layers of residual moisture that we have no idea about up on the dusty crust. If you now offer these established plants small rations of water on the surface with a watering can, you completely confuse the plant's natural biology. You are artificially suggesting to it that the life-saving water is located at the top. The plant then begins to form new, shallow roots, which would immediately burn on the next hot day. Have the courage and the composure to simply leave your established plants entirely in peace. Your watering energy is incredibly valuable. Do not waste it where nature can masterfully take care of itself. Exactly the same applies to your lawn, which is perhaps just turning from a lush green into a crispy, straw-like brown. I know, that hurts the eyes of any gardener who loves a beautiful yard. But a brown lawn in midsummer is absolutely not a death sentence. It is rather a brilliant, ancient survival mechanism of nature. When it gets extremely hot and dry, the grass draws all its juices and life energy back down into the safe, cooler roots deep in the soil. It intentionally lets the above-ground visible blades die off in order to stop losing moisture to the hot air through those green surfaces. The grass isn't dying, it's just going to sleep, so to speak. As soon as the first abundant, cooler rains fall in late August or September, this supposedly dead lawn will sprout lush green again from its roots all on its own within 10 to 14 days. Every drop of precious, clean drinking water that you sprinkle on a sleeping, brown lawn at 35 degrees is an unbelievable waste of resources and of your already scarce time. Let it rest in peace and save yourself the effort. We have seen together today that coping with a heat wave in the garden does not mean panicking or working even harder and longer physically. Rather, it means working significantly smarter and more thoughtfully. We set ruthless priorities with our clear emergency plan. We use the cool, quiet window in the morning. We protect the soil with mulch, and we water rarely, but extremely deeply and thoroughly. But the most important thing, in order not to find yourself in this exhausting, stressful situation again next July, begins much earlier in the gardening year. We must actively train our plants and their roots. When we train them in May and June to send their roots deep into the ground in search of water, we make them true, strong survival artists. How exactly you can carry out your own gentle root training in the spring, how you can literally program your garden for independence, and how you can even manage to go on vacation for a week or two with peace of mind in midsummer without everything withering at home. I will explain all of that to you, step by step, in my next video. Apply this emergency plan tonight, conserve your valuable energy, and get your garden safely and relaxedly through these extreme days.